and you have to match that up with dead splines in the coupler there. So that's not going to be fun. Welcome back to Freedom One Garage. Mackie's in the shop. Jalen's in the shop. It's a Sunday, and not Mackie, he doesn't have thumbs, but Jalen and I are going to stick the Dynaflow back in the 58 Buick Special. So it's all been resealed, even put a fancy coat of paint on it, and it's ready to go back in. So we're going to do that. I'm going to put you guys on a tripod because there just ain't room under there for two guys and a camera and a transmission and a jack and whatever else we need. So we'll have you watch from afar and see how that plans out. And when we make milestones, we'll bring you in and show you. Okay, step one in this process, for us anyway, we still had to clean the gasket off of the torque tube. So we did that, and then we installed the new rear seal. So this supposed to keep fluid from going down into the torque tube past the splines. So, and this is a little bit of a tricky one because the lip has to go to the inside. So you have to install this with some gentleness and patiently, so you don't collapse this outer edge, because you're driving against the edge instead of the flat part like you normally would putting the seal in. So that's done. Back up on the tripod for you guys and gals, and we're going to start maneuvering. How about an update? Jalen's, look at that organizing toolbox. We've been after it. The transmission is in, dudes and dudettes. We'll roll under here just a little bit for you. Trans is in, cross members in, and just for, if you don't know, there are shims on each side of these cross members. You can kind of see the corner of that one sticking out there. And they're different. It must center the engine and transmission, because then you get the torque tube thing and all that. Speaking of the torque tube, we are onto that. We still have, little things, torque converter bolts and the filler tube and all that for the transmission, but we're trying to tackle some of this tough stuff, and we're on to this bad ride. These are the splines, and it's got a dead spline, two of them actually, in the torque tube shaft. And you have to match that up with dead splines in the coupler there. So that's not going to be fun, but that's what we're going to try to do now. We've done a couple things to try and help ourselves out. We made some aligning studs out of some a little bit longer 3/8 bolts. And then we also shimmed up the torque tube on the frame right here. So we're kinda, we think, at the right height. So Jalen's gonna be back there going back and forth between the two ratchet straps and letting this come forward, and then my job is gonna be to try, hopefully we get lucky, but we're gonna try to get this splined up and on those two studs and back together. And that will be, you know, the big headaches will be done at that point. So we'll catch you back up when we figure out if this works or not. That is not a fun jobs. It's in there. Torque tube is connected properly. You know, getting it lined up, we did some shimming. These things were very helpful. If I could find them now, I was just had them out so I could show you. We went ahead and made a couple locator pins out of some longer bolts for the flange on the torque tube, and these were a godsend, because what had happened was it went in, you know, pretty smooth. We finally got our splines just right on the third try, and it went in pretty smooth. We had to goop some extra silicone on there because we had it apart for a while we were, you know, trial and erroring. But yeah, it would get to about an inch on its own, and then it would, I don't know if it was a bind or it's just because it's never been apart, some sealant on the splines, who knows. But then we had to take longer bolts and start to draw it in, and very carefully I had to get a mirror up in there and make sure that we were actually going into the splines and not just pushing on the back of the transmission and collapsing things that didn't want to be collapsed inside the transmission. But once we got her engaged good, then we went longer bolts, then a little bit shorter bolts, till finally we were able to pull it all the way together with the factory bolts. So a little more work and effort, actually a lot more effort than I had hoped. Probably par for the course otherwise. So that's in. Ooh, that looks spooky. Have a great 2024, everybody. We appreciate your support in 2023, and we can't wait to just rock it out and get you a lot of content in 2024. So comment on what you want us to do next, because we're getting some of these customer cars out of the way and we got projects. So go back and look at the projects and tell us what you want us to rip into next. So appreciate y'all. But we're done for the night, and then tomorrow morning we're going to seal this up, finish up a couple little things. We got bill housing, torque converter bolts, the flywheel cover, the park brake, put fluid in it. We're going to change out those rear shocks while we got it up in the air, and then, like I said, we get on to paint correction. Hey, we are back from our road test. We got our bath before we start paint correction. The transmission working wonderfully, not leaking, shifting nicely, forwards, backwards, down the highway, in the towns. Everything's, transmission-wise, is really happy. So I mentioned I wasn't going to say a whole lot until we figured it out and saw how some of these gaskets and things worked. But this is, we ended up on the eBay, and this is, if you search the eBay, best offer counts. It's a Buick, you know, parts specialty person. I'm telling you, things like the transmission rebuild kit, the coolant neck is where we got that, the coolant gaskets in that little O-ring. That was the third attempt, the third set of different gaskets and O-rings to get that neck to seal, and it worked like a champ. So hit these guys up if you're working on these nail heads, Dynaflows, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, clicking the bell, all those good things. We are on to the next thing for the Buick Special, and that's paint correction. Appreciate you. See you on the next video.